The first thing I saw on my own driveway that morning was my face, framed in a shaky phone screen, with a red live badge blinking like a warning light I should have taken more seriously. I didn't know who was watching yet, but I could hear her voice carrying across my fence, sharp and theatrical, already telling the internet that I was a criminal hiding behind private property laws. I remember thinking two things at once. 1. This woman was trespassing. 2. She had no idea what she had just put on camera. I stepped out of my barn with a mug of coffee still steaming in my hand, expecting a quiet morning of repairs and fence check. Instead, there she was, standing just inside my gate like she owned the place, phone held high, chin tilted up, eyes flicking between the screen and my house with the confidence of someone who had never been told no in her life. Karen wore a bright HOA polo shirt, the kind with an embroidered logo that screamed authority to people who didn't know better. She had a laminated badge around her neck, swinging as she paced, narrating every step like she was hosting a true crime documentary. "This is what they don't want you to see," she announced to her viewers, spinning slowly so the camera captured my land, my equipment, my barn, my fence lines. "This homeowner has been violating HOA standards for years, and today I'm exposing it." I took a sip of coffee and waited. Years of dealing with her had taught me that interrupting only fueled her. Karen loved an audience, and now she had one she couldn't see, which somehow made her even louder. She walked closer to the barn, zooming in on my tools, my fuel cans, my locked storage shed. The comments must have been rolling in because her smile widened, that tight, satisfied grin of someone who felt validated by strangers. She kept talking, pointing at things she clearly didn't understand, labeling them with confidence that bordered on delusion. "Unregistered equipment," she said, tapping the screen. "Unsafe storage. Environmental hazards. This is exactly why HOAs exist." That was when I set the mug down on the fence post and finally spoke. "You're on private property," I said. "You need to leave." Karen spun toward me, camera swinging wildly before locking onto my face. She looked thrilled, like she'd just caught a rare animal stepping into frame. Her eyes lit up. "There he is," she said brightly. "Everyone say hello. This is the homeowner who thinks rules don't apply to him." I could hear the faint echo of her livestream audio feeding back from her phone speaker, a chorus of distorted voices reacting in real time. She moved closer, angling the camera upward to make me look bigger, more threatening, or maybe just more dramatic. "I'm asking you once," I said. "Turn off the camera and leave." She laughed, a sharp, practiced sound. "Oh no, sweetheart. This is for my protection. We've had issues with aggression before, haven't we?" We hadn't. Not once. But that didn't matter. Karen had a narrative, and narratives were easier than fact. She started walking again, straight toward the back lot where the old service trench ran beneath the grass. My stomach tightened, not with fear, but with a strange sense of inevitability. There are moments when you know something bad is about to happen, and moments when you know something revealing is about to happen. This was the second kind. "Stop," I said. "Do not go past that marker." She zoomed in on the ground, laughing. "Look at this, everyone. He thinks cones and paint count as boundaries." That was when her heel caught the edge of the trench cover. The sound was subtle, a hollow metallic thunk that made my pulse jump. The camera dipped as she stumbled, then steadied again as she regained her balance. "Whoa," she said, giggling. "Almost took me out." She bent down, phone still streaming, and pointed it directly at the ground. The cracked cover plate. The exposed wiring conduit beneath. The faded municipal seal stamped into the metal, half hidden by dirt. The comments must have changed tone because Karen froze for a split second. Her smile twitched. "What is this?" she asked, more to herself than to me. "That," I said calmly, "is infrastructure you're not supposed to touch." She straightened, eyes narrowing, confidence snapping back into place. "Nice try. You can't scare me with made-up utilities." She turned the camera back on me, voice rising. "This is how they lie. They slap labels on things and hope no one questions it. But the internet was questioning it. I could see it on her face as she glanced at the screen again and again, reading comments she didn't like. Her posture stiffened. She walked closer to the trench, zooming in even more, trying to prove something, anything. "See," she said, pointing. "It's just a cover. Anyone could buy this." "You're live streaming a restricted access line," I said. "And you just showed the marker code." She scoffed, but her voice wavered. "Codes don't mean anything." I pulled my phone out then, not to record her, but to dial a number I'd memorized years ago. Karen noticed immediately. "Oh, now he's calling someone," she said to her viewers, delighted again. "Probably his lawyer." I didn't correct her. She kept talking, louder now, pacing in tight circles as the livestream continued to capture every angle she didn't understand. She accused me of hiding violations, of intimidating her, of sabotaging HOA inspections. Each accusation grew more elaborate, more detached from reality, as if saying it on camera made it true. Then her phone chimed. Once, twice. Rapid-fire alerts. Her eyes widened as she read. Her face drained of color so fast it was almost impressive. "No," she muttered. "That's not right." She scrolled frantically, lips moving as she read comments out loud without meaning to. Words like municipal, easement, federal, reporting, felony floated into the air between us like ghosts. I ended my call and looked at her. "You might want to stop streaming." Karen backed up a step, then another, suddenly aware of where she was standing. She glanced around like the land itself had turned on her. "You set me up," she snapped. I shook my head. "You walked in with a camera." The live stream kept running. The viewers kept watching. And somewhere out there, people who knew exactly what she'd just exposed were already making calls of their own. Karen didn't know it yet, but the moment she hit go live was the moment she lost control of the story. Karen stood there staring at her phone like it had betrayed her personally. The confidence she'd strutted in with was gone, replaced by the brittle posture of someone trying to keep a mask from cracking in front of an audience. Her live stream was still running. She hadn't even thought to shut it off. If anything, she clutched the phone tighter, as if squeezing it hard enough might force the comments to change. "That's fake," she said, loud enough for the viewers and for herself. "He's trying to scare you. This is exactly what these people do when they get caught." She swung the camera back at me, zooming in aggressively, probably hoping to frame me as the villain again. I didn't move. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't give her the reaction she wanted. That seemed to irritate her more than yelling ever could. "Tell them," she demanded. "Tell them you didn't rig this." "I didn't rig anything," I said. "You stepped over a posted boundary and filmed restricted infrastructure." Karen laughed again, but it came out wrong this time, thin and rushed. "Restricted by who? You?" "Because I checked HOA maps and there's nothing like this on there." "That's because it isn't HOA land," I replied. "And it never was." She frowned at the screen, scrolling harder now, her thumb moving so fast it looked like she was trying to erase something by sheer speed. The comments were no longer cheering her on. I could tell from the way her eyes darted back and forth, the way her jaw clenched. A breeze moved through the field, rattling the tall grass near the trench. Somewhere behind me, one of the barn doors creaked. The quiet of the property felt heavier now, like it was pressing in on her. "This is private property abuse," Karen announced, trying to regain control. "Everyone can see how hostile he's being." I hadn't moved an inch. "You're still here," I said. "And you're still streaming." She ignored that and started walking again, this time toward the fence line bordering the road. The camera panned wildly, capturing the posted signage she'd mocked earlier. "No trespassing. Utility easement. Restricted access. Emergency contact number." She zoomed in on the signs one by one, narrating with forced sarcasm. "Look at all these scare tactics. Big words. Big threats." Her phone chimed again. This time, she flinched. "What?" she snapped at the screen, then stopped talking entirely. Her face went pale in slow motion as she read. The comments were coming faster now, not just reactions but explanations. People tagging agencies. People quoting regulations. Someone posted a screenshot of a municipal database. Another mentioned livestream evidence laws. Karen turned the camera away from me and pointed it at the ground, as if hiding me would make the problem disappear. "Stop," she hissed at the phone. "Stop tagging things." She finally looked at me again, eyes sharp with accusation. "You planted those comments. You told people what to say." "I don't control the internet," I said. "You invited it here." Her mouth opened, then closed. For the first time since I'd known her, she seemed unsure what to do next. Karen thrived on script, on authority, on rehearsed confrontations where she knew the ending. This was unscripted, and it showed. She started pacing again, faster now, her voice climbing in pitch as she talked to her viewers, trying to drown them out. This is exactly why transparency matters. When homeowners think they're above the law, they hide things. A pickup slowed on the road beyond the fence. The driver glanced over, curious, then slowed even more when he saw the phone, the HOA logo, the confrontation unfolding in real time. Karen noticed and angled the camera so he was in frame. "See," she said triumphantly. "Witnesses." The truck rolled on. No one stopped. Her phone buzzed again, longer this time, a different tone. A call. She ignored it. Then another. She declined that one too, her thumb shaking as she jabbed the screen. "You need to leave," I said quietly. "Before this gets worse." She rounded on me, fury flashing back into her eyes. "Don't tell me what to do on my jurisdiction. It's not your jurisdiction." She raised the phone higher, voice sharp and performative again. "Everyone hear that? He's admitting he doesn't recognize HOA authority." I stepped aside and pointed toward the gate she'd come through. "You can go now." Instead, she turned and marched toward my storage shed, camera rolling, breath coming fast. "I'm documenting everything before you destroy evidence." "That shed is locked," I said. "Do not touch it." She reached out anyway, hand wrapping around the padlock. The camera caught it all. Her fingers, the lock, the posted warning label right above it. Her phone chimed again, almost continuously now. She yanked her hand back like the metal had burned her. "Why are they saying that?" she muttered. "That's not how easements work." I watched her read, watched realization creep in inch by inch. The internet was doing what it did best when given raw footage and time. They were connecting dots she hadn't even known existed. "You don't own this land," she said suddenly, pointing at me, desperation creeping into her voice. "The HOA governs it." "No," I replied. "The HOA governs the houses. This land predates it." She stared at me, then at the camera, then back at the signs. Her confidence collapsed inward, folding under the weight of too many eyes seeing too much. A siren wailed faintly in the distance. Not close. Not yet. But close enough to hear. Karen swallowed hard. She turned the camera back on herself, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We're going to take a short break," she said, voice tight. "This situation is evolving." She reached to end the stream. Her thumb hovered. Then another comment popped up, bold enough to make her gasp. She didn't end it. She couldn't look away. And whatever she had just read, it had shifted something irreversible, because the woman who stood on my property now wasn't a crusader anymore. She was someone realizing, live and in front of hundreds of witnesses, that she might have just documented her own mistake in high definition. Karen stopped pacing and went completely still, like an animal that had just heard a sound it didn't recognize. Her phone was still up, still broadcasting, but she wasn't narrating anymore. The silence stretched long enough that even the livestream seemed to hold its breath. "What do you mean illegal entry?" she said finally, reading directly from the screen. Her voice cracked on the last word, and she cleared her throat as if that would fix it. "That's not accurate." She scrolled again, slower this time, actually reading instead of skimming. Her face went through emotions she couldn't hide fast enough. Confusion. Annoyance. A flash of panic. She turned the phone sideways for a second, accidentally showing the comment section in full before snapping it back toward herself. "No," she said louder. "You're misunderstanding. This is an HOA inspection." I leaned against the fence and watched her unravel. "HOAs don't get inspection rights on utility easements," I said. "Especially not live on social media." She shot me a look that could have cut wire. "Stop coaching them." "I'm not," I replied. "They're coaching you." That made her flinch. She turned away from me and started walking again, faster now, boots crunching against gravel as she headed toward the edge of the property where the land dipped slightly. The camera followed, capturing more than she intended. The trench markers, the buried conduit path, the small placards posted every few meters, faded but unmistakable. "Look," she said breathlessly, trying to regain momentum. "If this was what you claim it is, there would be official fencing." "There was," I said, "before the HOA removed it 3 years ago." She froze mid-step. "What did you say?" she asked slowly. "You heard me." She spun around, camera swinging back to my face. "You're accusing the HOA of tampering with government property?" "I reported it," I said. "With photos, date, GPS tags." Her eyes widened just a fraction before she masked it with a scoff. "Then why hasn't anything happened?" "It has," I said. "Just not loudly." Her phone buzzed again, this time a long vibration that made her wince. She glanced down, then back up at me, then down again. Her breathing changed. Faster. Shallower. "They're asking for the marker code again," she muttered. "Why do they care so much about the code?" "Because it identifies the line," I said. "And the access class." She swallowed. "Access class for what?" I didn't answer immediately. I let the quiet do the work for me. The wind picked up, rustling the grass along the trench, lifting dust into the air. Somewhere in the distance, a bird took off suddenly, wings beating hard. "For emergency systems," I said finally. "And for monitoring." Her face drained of color. "Monitoring what?" "You're still streaming," I reminded her. She looked at the phone like it had turned into a snake. Her thumb hovered over the screen again, shaking now, but she still didn't end the broadcast. Pride is a powerful thing. So is fear. Together, they can paralyze a person. "I have a right to be here," she said, louder, voice climbing again as she turned back to the camera. "The HOA board authorized this inspection. If there's an issue, it's with them." That was a mistake. The comments exploded. I could see it from 10 feet away, the rapid-fire scroll, the way her eyes struggled to keep up. Someone clipped her statement instantly. Someone else tagged a public records account. Another comment referenced board liability and individual responsibility. "No," she whispered. "That's not how that works." She started backing up, slowly at first, then faster, retreating toward the gate she'd entered through. The camera shook as she walked, catching flashes of the property she'd confidently marched through minutes earlier. Now it looked different, more hostile, more dangerous, simply because she understood less and less of it. Her phone rang again. This time she answered without thinking, holding it up so the livestream could hear. "What?" she snapped. Her expression changed immediately. Her mouth fell open slightly, then closed. She turned away from the camera, but not far enough. The microphone still picked up fragments. "No, I didn't know," she said. "He never told us that." A pause. Her shoulders slumped. "Yes, I'm there right now." Another pause, longer this time. "I'm handling it." She ended the call abruptly and stared at the ground. When she looked up again, something had shifted. The bravado was gone. The performance was cracking under its own weight. "You should end the stream," I said again. "For your own sake." She laughed weakly. "If I do that, it looks like I'm hiding something." I nodded. "If you don't, it looks like you're documenting it." That landed. Her phone buzzed again, and this time she didn't even look. She just backed up another step, then another, until her heel hit the edge of the driveway. She stumbled, caught herself, and the camera briefly tilted upward, catching the sky, bright and cloudless, indifferent to her panic. "I'm leaving," she said suddenly, too quickly. "This inspection is over." "You were never authorized to start it," I said. She glared at me, eyes wet with rage or fear, maybe both. "You think you won." "I think you went live without knowing where you were standing," I replied. She turned and walked toward her car, stream still running, still broadcasting every rushed step, every whispered curse, every comment she didn't want to read. As she reached the driver's door, a new alert popped up on her screen, one she couldn't ignore because it took over the entire display. Her hand froze on the door handle. "What does that mean?" she whispered, staring at the phone. I didn't need to see it to know. Whatever the viewers had just uncovered, it had moved beyond speculation. Karen slid into her car and slammed the door shut, but the livestream didn't end. The camera pointed at her lap now, catching her uneven breathing as the engine roared to life. She peeled out of my driveway in a cloud of dust and denial. And somewhere out there, people who had been quietly watching were no longer just watching anymore. The dust from Karen's tires hung in the air long after her car disappeared down the road. For a few seconds, the property felt unnaturally quiet, like everything was waiting to see what would happen next. I stood there listening to the engine fade, watching the live stream icon still blinking on her phone's screen through the windshield as she drove away. She never turned it off. Not once. I went back to what I'd been doing before she showed up, mostly because there was nothing else to do. You don't chase someone like Karen. You let momentum catch them. I finished tightening a loose hinge on the barn door, wiped my hands on a rag, and checked my own phone. Notifications had started stacking up. Missed calls. Texts from numbers I didn't recognize. A voicemail from someone who introduced themselves very carefully and very professionally. I didn't return any of them yet. By the time I walked back toward the house, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a message with a link. I didn't need to click it to know what it was. Karen's livestream had been clipped, reposted, slowed down, zoomed in, analyzed frame by people who treated public footage like a puzzle begging to be solved. I watched anyway. The video opened with her voice, confident and loud, declaring violations. Then the stumble. The exposed cover. The marker code. Someone had circled it in red and added text explaining exactly what it referenced. Another clip followed, showing her hand on the padlock, freeze-framed with a caption listing the statute she'd walked straight into. I scrolled through the comments. Thousands of them now. Not cheering. Not mocking, at least not mostly. This was something else. This was the internet shifting from entertainment to investigation. Half an hour later, a county vehicle turned onto the road and slowed as it approached my gate. Then another. And another. No sirens. No urgency. Just calm, deliberate movement. They didn't rush in. They parked outside the fence and waited. I walked out to meet them. The man who stepped out first didn't introduce himself right away. He took in the property, the signage, the markers, the trench line Karen had so eagerly filmed. Then he nodded, like he was confirming something he already knew. "Appreciate you calling earlier," he said. "We didn't expect this to go public." "I didn't make it public," I replied. He gave me a look that suggested he knew that perfectly well. Another official joined us, then another. They spoke quietly, glancing at their phones, at the fence, at the printed screenshots one of them held. Karen's face stared back at us from glossy paper, frozen mid-accusation. "She's still live," one of them said, checking his screen. "Driving." The first man sighed. "Of course she is." They asked me a few simple questions. Where she entered. What she touched. What she filmed. I answered honestly. I didn't embellish. I didn't need to. One of them shook his head slowly. She crossed 3 different lines without realizing it. "I told her to leave," I said. "We can see that," he replied, tapping the screenshot. She kept going. While they talked, my phone buzzed again. A notification from a neighborhood group chat I'd muted months ago. Karen's name was everywhere now. People arguing. People asking questions. People suddenly remembering things she'd done before that hadn't made sense at the time. Then a new message appeared, pinned to the top of the chat by a moderator. HOA emergency meeting tonight. I showed it to the officials. One of them snorted quietly. Too late for that. Karen's livestream finally ended 40 minutes after she left my property. Not with a statement. Not with an apology. It just cut off mid-breath. Someone immediately reposted the last frame, time-stamped, archived. By the afternoon, her name was trending locally. Not as an activist. Not as a whistleblower. As an example. A second county vehicle arrived. Then a third. They placed temporary barriers along the fence line and added fresh signage, the kind no one could pretend not to understand. One of them apologized to me, not because they'd done something wrong, but because this should never have been allowed to reach this point. You warned them, he said. I documented it, I replied. As the sun dipped lower, a black SUV pulled up and parked across the road. This one didn't have markings. The person who stepped out wore plain clothes and carried a thin folder under his arm. He walked with the kind of calm that comes from certainty. Property owner, he said. Not a question. I nodded. We'd like to ask about the HOA, he continued. Specifically their past interactions with this site. I gestured toward the house. You might want to sit down. We did. He listened, took notes, asked careful questions. Never once raised his voice. When I finished, he closed the folder and nodded. She livestreamed her own evidence, he said. That's rare. Is that bad for her? I asked. It depends, he replied, on how long she's been doing this. As he left, my phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. You set her up. I stared at it for a moment, then typed back. She set herself up. The reply came almost instantly. This isn't over. I looked out across my land, now quiet again, now watched by people who actually belonged here. Somewhere, Karen was probably refreshing her phone, watching her world tilt on a screen she couldn't control anymore. It wasn't over. But it wasn't mine anymore either. By the next morning, the HOA was in full damage control mode. You could feel it even before anyone said anything. The silence from their side was too clean, too coordinated. Karen's name had vanished from the community website overnight. Her smiling headshot, the one with the overly white teeth and the caption about community values, had been replaced by a blank square and a generic email address. That never happens unless someone is panicking. I was halfway through fixing a broken latch when my phone rang. Unknown number again. I almost ignored it, but something told me not to. This is Mark, the voice said carefully when I answered. I'm calling on behalf of the HOA board. I leaned against the workbench and waited. We wanted to clarify a few misunderstandings, he continued. Karen was acting independently. That made me laugh before I could stop myself. It wasn't loud or dramatic. Just a short, surprised sound. She announced your authorization on a livestream, I said. Several times. Yes, well, he replied, already defensive. She misspoke. She trespassed, filmed restricted infrastructure, and accused me of crimes in front of thousands of people, I said. That's more than a slip of the tongue. There was a pause on the line. Papers rustled. I could picture him sitting at a table with other board members, all of them staring at screens showing clips they wished didn't exist. We'd like to resolve this amicably, he said finally. Perhaps a private discussion. I've already had one, I replied. With the county. Another pause. Longer this time. You should understand, he said, voice tightening, that continued escalation could affect the neighborhood. I smiled even though he couldn't see it. Escalation happened when she hit go live. He hung up without saying goodbye. Not 10 minutes later, a car pulled into my driveway again. Different vehicle. Different person. This time it was a woman in a blazer that cost more than my truck, holding a tablet instead of a phone. She didn't step past the gate. That alone told me she'd done her homework. "Mr. Harris," she said, reading from the screen. "I represent the HOA. "You're late," I replied. "They already called." She nodded, unfazed. "We're trying to contain the situation." "You can't," I said. "It's archived." Her jaw tightened for just a second before she smoothed it out. "Karen is on administrative leave. That's not my concern. She acted outside board directives." "She said otherwise," I replied. "On camera." The woman sighed and tapped her tablet. "We are prepared to issue a formal apology." "To me?" I asked. "To the community," she corrected. I shook my head. "You don't apologize to a crowd for something you did to one person." She studied me then, really looked at me, like she was reassessing the power dynamic she'd assumed walking in. "What do you want?" she asked. "I want you off my land," I said. "Permanently." Her eyes flicked to the signs, the barriers, the new markings the county had installed. She swallowed. "That may already be out of our hands." While we were talking, my phone buzzed again. A notification from a news site. Then another. Someone had written an article. Karen's livestream wasn't just viral now. It was being cited. The woman noticed my expression change. "What is it?" "They're asking questions," I said. "Public ones." She exhaled slowly. "Karen didn't tell us about the markers." "She didn't ask," I replied. The woman left without another word. No handshake. No threats. Just quiet retreat. By the afternoon, Karen's face was everywhere. Not the confident HOA enforcer from the livestream, but screenshots of her panic, her frozen expressions, her hand on the lock. People were digging into her past posts now. Other confrontations. Other videos. Patterns emerging. Someone messaged me a clip I hadn't seen yet. Karen, months ago, bragging about forcing access onto a property because she knew how to make people comply. Laughing about it. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. As the sun set, county officials returned, this time with documentation. Formal notices. Timelines. They walked the property with me again, marking things Karen had shown the world. Evidence doesn't disappear just because you wish it would. "She didn't just expose this site," one of them said quietly. "She exposed herself." That night, my phone buzzed one last time. A message from Karen herself. "You ruined my life." I stared at it for a long moment. Then I typed back. "You live-streamed it." She didn't reply. Somewhere out there, a woman who thought a camera made her powerful was realizing that it also made her accountable. Karen didn't show up to the emergency HOA meeting that night. That alone told everyone more than any statement ever could. The board sent out a carefully worded email instead, full of phrases like internal review and procedural oversight, the kind of language meant to sound responsible while admitting nothing. But the internet doesn't read between the lines. It reads receipts. By morning, those receipts were everywhere. Someone had dug up old meeting minutes and posted screenshots showing Karen's name attached to access requests that had been quietly approved years ago. Another person found a comment she'd made under a neighborhood post bragging about knowing how to get around stubborn landowners. A former resident shared a clip of her threatening fines she had no authority to issue. Each discovery stacked neatly on top of the last, turning what had been a single bad livestream into a pattern. I found out about most of it from a reporter who showed up unannounced just after lunch. He stood at the gate with his hands visible, not crossing the line, phone tucked away. He introduced himself, explained why he was there, and asked if I'd be willing to talk. "I'm not interested in publicity," I told him. "I don't think you're the story," he replied. That made me pause. "She live-streamed a restricted site," he continued. "People want to know how that was even possible." So I talked. Not about her, but about boundaries. About reports that went unanswered. About how authority without oversight turns into entitlement. I didn't have to say her name. Everyone already knew it. By the time he left, my phone was buzzing again. Not with threats this time, but with updates. Karen had posted a statement. Or tried to. Someone sent me a screenshot before it disappeared. It was long, rambling, and defensive. She blamed misinformation. She blamed stress. She blamed harassment. She never once mentioned stepping onto private land or filming what she shouldn't have. The comments tore it apart in minutes. Later that afternoon, a county official called to let me know they'd made contact with her directly. Not through the HOA. Not through a lawyer. Directly. She's not taking it well, he said. I didn't expect her to, I replied. She keeps insisting she was doing her job. Then she should have known where she was standing. There was a silence on the line. Then, quieter, that's exactly the problem. The real shift happened that evening. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just a quiet update posted on a public notice board. Karen's name, listed under a heading she'd never imagined herself under. Investigation pending. The HOA went dark after that. Their social media accounts stopped posting. Emails went unanswered. The emergency meeting was postponed indefinitely. People in the neighborhood started talking to each other instead of through Karen. Old grievances surfaced. New questions formed. I watched it all from a distance. The property was calm again. The markers stood where they always had. The land hadn't changed. Only the story people told about it had. That night, I got another message from an unknown number. They're blaming you. I didn't need to ask who they were. They always do, I typed back. The reply took longer this time. She thought the livestream would protect her. I stared at the screen, then out at the dark field beyond my window. Cameras don't protect you, I wrote. They remember. There was no response after that. Somewhere out there, Karen was learning the difference between being loud and being right. And for the first time, the audience she'd relied on wasn't cheering. They were watching, waiting, and documenting everything she did next. Karen didn't show up to the emergency HOA meeting that night. That alone told everyone more than any statement ever could. The board sent out a carefully worded email instead, full of phrases like internal review and procedural oversight, the kind of language meant to sound responsible while admitting nothing. But the internet doesn't read between the lines. It reads receipts. By morning, those receipts were everywhere. Someone had dug up old meeting minutes and posted screenshots showing Karen's name attached to access requests that had been quietly approved years ago. Another person found a comment she'd made under a neighborhood post bragging about knowing how to get around stubborn landowners. A former resident shared a clip of her threatening fines she had no authority to issue. Each discovery stacked neatly on top of the last, turning what had been a single bad livestream into a pattern. I found out about most of it from a reporter who showed up unannounced just after lunch. He stood at the gate with his hands visible, not crossing the line, phone tucked away. He introduced himself, explained why he was there, and asked if I'd be willing to talk. "I'm not interested in publicity," I told him. "I don't think you're the story," he replied. That made me pause. "She live-streamed a restricted site," he continued. "People want to know how that was even possible." So I talked. Not about her, but about boundaries. About reports that went unanswered. About how authority without oversight turns into entitlement. I didn't have to say her name. Everyone already knew it. By the time he left, my phone was buzzing again. Not with threats this time, but with updates. Karen had posted a statement. Or tried to. Someone sent me a screenshot before it disappeared. It was long, rambling, and defensive. She blamed misinformation. She blamed stress. She blamed harassment. She never once mentioned stepping onto private land or filming what she shouldn't have. The comments tore it apart in minutes. Later that afternoon, a county official called to let me know they'd made contact with her directly. Not through the HOA. Not through a lawyer. Directly. "She's not taking it well," he said. "I didn't expect her to," I replied. "She keeps insisting she was doing her job. Then she should have known where she was standing." There was a silence on the line. Then, quieter, that's exactly the problem. The real shift happened that evening. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just a quiet update posted on a public notice board. Karen's name, listed under a heading she'd never imagined herself under. Investigation pending. The HOA went dark after that. Their social media accounts stopped posting. Emails went unanswered. The emergency meeting was postponed indefinitely. People in the neighborhood started talking to each other instead of through Karen. Old grievances surfaced. New questions formed. I watched it all from a distance. The property was calm again. The markers stood where they always had. The land hadn't changed. Only the story people told about it had. That night, I got another message from an unknown number. "They're blaming you." I didn't need to ask who they were. "They always do," I typed back. The reply took longer this time. She thought the livestream would protect her. I stared at the screen, then out at the dark field beyond my window. "Cameras don't protect you," I wrote. "They remember." There was no response after that. Somewhere out there, Karen was learning the difference between being loud and being right. And for the first time, the audience she'd relied on wasn't cheering. They were watching, waiting, and documenting everything she did next. The decision came 3 days later, posted quietly on a public docket most people would never bother to check. No press conference. No dramatic reading. Just names, findings, consequences. Karen's name sat there in plain text, stripped of the authority she'd wrapped around it for years. Trespass. Misrepresentation. Unauthorized access. Improper use of recorded media. Each line read colder than the last. By the end of the page, she was done. The HOA followed a week after that. Not dissolved, not dismantled, just reduced. Their jurisdiction formally clarified. Their boundaries redrawn. Their inspection privileges rewritten in language so tight it left no room for interpretation. The land I owned was no longer a gray area anyone could pretend to misunderstand. It was sealed in ink, signed by people who didn't care about live streams or loud voices. Karen never returned to my property. I heard about her anyway. People talk. Someone said she tried to spin the outcome online, framed it as a warning about censorship and mob justice. The video didn't last long. Someone else said she'd been quietly removed from 3 neighborhood boards she'd once bragged about controlling. Her social media accounts went private, then inactive, then gone. The camera that had once followed her everywhere finally stopped. The county removed the temporary barriers a month later, replacing them with permanent markers that didn't need explaining. One of the officials shook my hand and apologized again, not because he had to, but because it mattered to him that someone had been listened to too late. "You did everything right," he said. "I did everything I could," I replied. Life settled back into something resembling normal. Mornings returned to quiet routines. Fence repairs. Coffee on the porch. The land didn't remember the chaos. It never does. It just waits for people to either respect it or reveal themselves on it. One afternoon, I found a package on my doorstep. No note. No return address. Inside was a printed screenshot from Karen's livestream, the moment right after she stumbled, when the camera had caught the marker code perfectly clear. Someone had written a single sentence beneath it in pen. She showed everyone who she was. I slid the paper into a drawer and closed it. Weeks later, I drove past the old HOA office out of habit. The sign was gone. The windows dark. Whatever replaced it would have to start quieter, humbler, aware of what happens when power forgets its limit. That night, I sat on the porch and watched the sun drop behind the tree line, the sky turning the same calm colors it always had. My phone buzzed once. A notification from a legal archive confirming the case was officially closed. No appeals. No statements. Just an ending. I thought back to the moment Karen lifted her phone and pressed go live, convinced the world would bend to her version of the story. She'd believed visibility was protection, that being watched meant being untouchable. She'd been wrong. The viewers didn't save her. They didn't attack her either. They did something far more dangerous to someone like her. They paid attention. And in the end, that was the only thing that mattered.